Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So today our agenda is to understand what are services, what is the difference, what are the different types of services, and what is the difference between goods and services. Okay, so let's have a detailed analysis of what are services, the definition of services, and so on. So keep your books and pens and paper ready. Here we go. There are 2-3 definitions for services. In the historical view, in 1776, way back, Smith has differentiated the service on the basis of perishability. He said services are different from goods because they are perishable. Because maybe at that point of time, the only thing that differentiated a service and a good may be perishability. But in 1803, about years later, as services are immaterial, consumption and cannot be separated from production. Now this is another difference between product and service. The consumption and production. For example, a food, for example a bakery item, for example a puffs or for example a pizza. It is being manufactured in a kitchen or an oven. Now it is getting transported and you consume the product only at your house, maybe a restaurant, maybe a fast food joint, maybe it's a different place. So the production and consumption are at 2 different places. Now to take the example of a surgery that is happening. The service that is happening there is the surgery or the doctor giving a surgery to a patient. And what is the consumption that is happening? The patient's heart or the surgery, maybe imagine it's a heart transplant. Heart is getting transplanted and the consumption is happening at the same place. Take another example. Teaching. You are delivering that, the teacher is delivering the service or giving a lecture at one point of time. At the same point of time, the student is grabbing the information, taking down notes, and his mental stimulus is getting processed. But the consumption, which means what? The production and consumption is happening at the same time. Now, that is what Smith and Say said about services years back. Now, the most modern definition for service is the fresh perspective, or the fresh definition for service is benefit without ownership. Underline these words. The definition for service is benefit without ownership. Now, there are rental of goods. Let us see to different types of service industry. There are 15 different spectrum of service industry. The first one is travel and tourism. You have travel and tourism industry, which is highly booming in today's world. You have hospitality industry. You have hotels, motels, palaces happening around. You have catering and restaurant industries. You have a lot of restaurants in and around you. It is actually a big industry, restaurant industry. IT-enabled services. You have Infosys, TCS, Wipro giving you IT-enabled services. Consultancy services are being provided. There are different types of transportation services in the form of airlines, Singapore Airlines, Indian Airlines, British Airlines, and so on. You have railways, Indian Railways, and maybe other railways around the globe. You have bus services. Maybe I don't have to name it, you know it. You have trucking, you have shipping services, cargo services happening in ships, passenger services happening in ships, n number of services happening in the form of transportation services. You have couriers, cargo, and logistics. This is upcoming and booming in this industry as with the coming of e-tailing, or rather we call it online shopping. What happens during online shopping? You are availing a service through online. For example, you are buying a laptop for yourself in online, but the laptops get dispatched and reaches your home through cargo services and logistical services. And the examples for different brands of cargo services is there on the screen. You have UPS, FedEx is one of the most leading cargo brand or courier brand. You have TNT, DHL, EMS, etc. Leisure is another service industry. You have a lot of honeymoon packages. You have a lot of rest taking industries. Take the case of the packages which gives you relaxations, Then there are n number of industries wherein you avail the services of leisure and pleasure. And there is retailing industry, and you have banking industry where there is a lot of banking and insurance services coming to you, insurance service. Healthcare and hospital management. Nowadays it is not the case of one particular hospital. You have a consortium of hospitals like Medicities happening. It is also a biggest grossing industry which is providing a lot of GDP for the country. That is healthcare industry. Housing and construction industry. You have communication and entertainment industry. Take the example of Vodafone, Etisalat, Docomo, Videocon, Airtel, Idea. These are communication industries. At the same time, there are entertainment industries. Take the example of, this theaters, plays, operas. Then you have also take the examples of Wonderland, amusement parks. These are the examples of entertainment industries. And finally, you have financial services. So in a broader spectrum, these are the different types of service industries. You might be aware of all these things, but it might be a fact that you don't remember them in order, that these are the different service industries. So once again, the different service industries are the 15 ones that you see on screen. Now, what are services in fact? How do you basically understand what a service is? There are 5 broad categories within non-ownership framework, of which 2 or more may be combined. There are 5 different ways in which you can basically avail a service. The first one is rented goods service. For example, you avail the goods in rent. For example, you take a boat service. You avail a boat to enjoy the backwaters of the city. Now that is a service that you avail in the form of a rent. You avail fancy dress costumes. You take costumes in the form of rent, and the service personnel is giving it to you in the form of a rent. So it is a rented service. Defined space and place rentals. Now what happens when you are going to a movie theater? You are taking that particular seat in the form of a rent for that particular movie experience of 2.5 hours. Now that is a defined space and place that you take as a rent. Then seat in an aircraft, table in a hotel, a room in a mall. All these are examples for defined space and place rentals. Labor and expertise rentals. Now what happens? You take the expertise of some people in the form of labor for you as a service. For example, the surgery. In the case of a surgery, what happens? You are taking the expertise of a doctor to avail the service on you or your siblings or your relatives. Consultancy services, a car repair. So these are labor and expertise rentals. Access to shared physical environments. Parks. You are availing the service of a shared physical environment where a lot of people joins together. Gym. It's not only you go there. There are n number of people who come there and avail the service of a gym. Golf course. Not you alone, but those people who are inspired, who are having the sport in golf comes there. Malls, cricket clubs. All these are examples of access to shared physical environment. And access to usage of systems and networks. There are n number of ways in which a shared network is being used by many people. Like telecom providers, you have a nodal hub or a Wi-Fi spot where n number of people comes together and access the network. So these are examples for access to and usage of systems and networks. So in broad, you can say that there are 5 broad categories within non-ownership framework, of which 2 or more may be combined. The first one is rental goods services. The second one is defined space and place rentals. The third one is labor and expertise rentals. Fourth one, access to shared physical environment. The last one, access to the usage of systems and networks. Now, defining the services once again, the services are economic activities offered by one party to another. There are 2 things that you see in most of the service. The first one, there is always an economic activity. It always has a money element always been interwinkled with it. And most commonly employ time-based performances. And there is a time element. There is a money element. There is a time element. Now take the example of the first particular example of boat service. or fancy dress costume. Now, in both of these, or rather every of these things, there is a money element or an economic element that has been involved in it. In the case of fancy dress costume, a boat, you are giving, for the exchange of fancy dress material that you're giving them money. And it's not that you can keep the material for n number of days and years, but you have to give it after a stipulated time. You can avail the boat service by giving some money, but not like you are availing the boat for your lifetime, but you're giving it for a particular period or duration of time. And that is what is being said. The services are economic activities offered by one party to the another, most commonly employ time-based performances to bring about desired results. In exchange for their money, time and effort, service customers obtain value. Now what happens? You are giving them money. At the same time, being a customer, you expect not only the economic activities or not only the money part or the time frame that is being associated with that. You expect in return the access to goods, labor, facilities, environment, professional skill, network, systems. Normally do not take ownership of any of these physical environments, elements involved. Now, it doesn't mean that you do a boat service and you take the ownership. Say that, oh, this boat is mine. You never say that. And you go book a seat in an aircraft, and you never say that after the service, when you reach the destination, you never say that this seat is mine and I will not go away from here. You never say that. So it is very common in services. You can say there are three things. There is an economic activity. It is based on a stipulated time frame, and finally you don't claim the ownership. So that the definition is very simple. Definition as it has been said there, it is benefit without ownership. So the benefit without ownership is well explained with this particular slide. Now, here we're going to do something, a small exercise called tangibility spectrum, or in other sense we call it product service continuum. And I always advise my students to memorize these different things that is on screen, because it is highly necessary that during your exams you will have to write these down in correct order, and the order of these products being given here is highly important. So make sure that you learn as I speak on. Okay. Now, what is tangibility spectrum? Now, you have a spectrum of products being given on your screen. Now, there is a continuous thing that is happening. What is it? That is the tangibility. On the left hand, you have tangible dominant products like salt, where there is a lot of tangibility. For example, you can touch salt, or rather there is no service element associated with that. But as it moves towards the right, you have more and more of intangible elements coming along to it. There is a lot of service elements coming along to it, or rather it becomes much more service oriented or a pure service product. For example, teaching. Now in teaching, there is no much tangible elements. There may be laptops, there may be books, there may be pen, there may be board, there may be a physical teacher who's teaching there. But ultimately what happens? The service is given to your intellect. The service is given to your knowledge. The service is given in the form of knowledge, not in the form of a product. So it is more sort of intangibility that is happening there than the tangible things. Okay, so let's explain. Now, at the left end, you have salt. Now, what happens? What is the speciality of a salt? In the case of a salt, there is no much service element along with that. It is a product, and you use this product. That's it. As you go right, you have soft drinks. Now, soft drinks is a product, but it becomes a little more service-oriented product, or becomes intermingled with service when you go to a hotel and a bearer brings it towards you. Now, the act that the bearer bringing it towards you, to you, is a service. Now, detergent, automobiles. In the case of automobiles, you are driving the automobile. Okay, there is no service in that. But a car rental, automobile is being rented, it becomes a service. Now, after sales service, the service that is being done, servicing of your automobile, refueling of automobile, there are a lot of intangible or a service elements associated with automobiles. Cosmetics. You using the cosmetics is okay, there is no much service in that. But if you are going to a beauty parlor, you're going to a spa, In that cases, it becomes a service that is being rented out by that particular expert who is renting out the service of spa or a haircut or a beautician. Now, fast food outlets becomes the break-even point or the break point. Now, what happens in fast food outlets? You enter. Let's do in detail. Let's take a blueprint as what happens once you enter a restaurant. You enter a restaurant, you take your seat, and suddenly or after seconds of time, a bearer or a waiter comes towards you. He gives you hands off a menu. You read the menu and you order the stuff. Then comes the service element. Now he takes away the order. He takes it back to the back end, and in the kitchen, the chef prepares the food. The service is being happening there. The bearer brings the food. Service happens there. You eat the food, and then you give the tip to the bearer, whatever, and then you walk out, giving a pleasant experience or taking back the pleasant experience of a good meal that you ate there. Now the ambience, the smell, everything together gives you the feel of a good service experience. Now there is a lot of tangible element as well as service element that is coming in this particular example of fast food outlet. That is why it becomes a break-even point. Here you have on top, you say about the tangible elements or the product elements. And the below you say about the service element or intangible elements. So fast food outlets has a little bit more of 50% or rather some element of tangibility and some element of intangibility. Advertising agency. Take the example of Vodafone Zuzus. Okay, it was produced by an ad agency called Oblivion Matter, and maybe it was headed by Malayali, and the one who gave this idea of Zuzu, actually what is being given out, the service that was delivered there is the idea. And ad agency got this idea and made it into a proper ad, and the service of ad was aired in different medias. Now there is a lot of intangible element happening in advertising agencies. In airlines, the same way. If you take the blueprint, you are availing the service of that particular aircraft, the pilot who is driving, then there is air hostess, cabin crews who are delivering the service of giving you a good service experience of flight. Then you have investment management, consulting, teaching. So as you move towards the right end of the spectrum, there are a lot of intangible dominancy happening. Now this is the right example for a product service continuum. There is a continuous activity where this is happening from where there is tangible dominancy to intangible dominancy. So take time and memorize this and put the same things into your answer paper. Okay, going ahead. You have service products versus customer service and after sales service. A firm's market offerings are divided into core product elements and supplementary service elements. You need to distinguish between the marketing of services and marketing through services. So this slide almost speaks about that if there are product elements, there are different types of products. For example, core product, augmented basic product, expected product, augmented product, etc. So if your core product becomes a service, then it becomes a little more complicated as how you should handle it than the product than if it is a product which is the core element. Now let us look into a detailed analysis of the classification of services. Now the next topic of discussion is the classification of services, but what happens is the different books have different ways of classifying services. Now various authors have tried to classify services on the basis of different features. I will try to demonstrate, I'll try to explain the classification of services from different angles. So let's see them. Classification of services basically done on 5 major demarcations. The first one is the nature of service act. How the service is being delivered. Now the next one is type of relationship that the service organization has with the customers. If it is if the relationship is high or the relationship is low. Next one is the scope for customization. Now, regarding the scope for customization, you are classifying the services. Nature of demand for the service. Based on the demand for the service, if it is a highly demanded service or low demand service, based on that you can classify the service. Methods of service delivery. Now, based on that also you can classify the service. Let's see the first one. Based on the Nature of Service Act, how you classify the service. Based on the Nature of Service Act, you can classify them based on tangibility and intangibility. The Service Act consists of tangible and intangible actions. The tangible actions in turn are directed at people and things, while the intangible actions are directed at customers' intellect and their assets. Now, you have tangible actions and intangible actions. Let us see the tangible actions that is done on people. Now, health care. In the case of healthcare, the tangible actions are done on people. In the case of beauty salon, the service is done on people. In the case of restaurants also, the service is done on people. Now, there are some things where the actions are done on things. For example, you are not doing a service on you, but you are doing a service on the things, on different things. For example, freight and transportation. In this case, nothing is happening to you or people, but the service is directly done on different things like maybe courier service, maybe some of your possessions are being getting couriered, and dry cleaning, your dress is getting dry cleaned, nothing is happening to you. Veterinary service, nothing is happening to you, but your pets, puppy, or your, maybe your domestic animals are getting this service. So recipients of services become maybe people or things, and the tangible actions. In the case of intangibility, what intangible things happens on you? What benefit you get in the form of intangibility on you? For example, education. You get intangible education in the form of education is actually intangible thing. And you get, actually, who gets education? I get the education. If I study, I get the education. Information services. Information service, who get the information service? I myself get the information service. So it is like the recipient of the services, I myself. And entertainment. If I go to a theater, I actually get something, an intangible benefit of entertainment in the form of a movie. So that is the intangible actions. And in the case of intangible actions on things, you have banks, legal service, insurance, which is actually something that is happening on your possessions. You're not getting the service, but your possessions are getting the service. So that is it. You can based on the Nature of Service Act, you can classify things based on tangibility and intangibility. And you can recipient of the service could be people and things. And in short, I can conclude that you can classify services based on the Nature of Service Act. The next one is type of relationship that the service organization has with the customers. Now, based on the nature of the service delivery, it could be continuous or intermittent or discrete. And it also could be on the type of relationship between the service organization and the customers. You could be a member of the organization, or you could have a very thick relationship or a constant relationship, or there could be no formal relationship. Now, let's take the example of continuous delivery of service where there is a membership relationship. Now, in the case of insurance, cable TV, college enrollment and banking, these are services which you get continuously. If you join a course, you get the studies continuously for a particular stipulated period of time, and membership is highly required. There is high tangibility there. Cable TV subscription. You subscribe for a cable TV and you get the service as long as the subscription is there, and it is a continuous activity. Now the examples where there is no formal relationship gives you the contrast between the continuous delivery of service where there is no formal relationship. For example, radio station. In the case of radio station, the radio, the service is being transmitted to all, or it is being broadcasted to all. If you want to avail, you can avail. There is no formal relationship. You don't have to take a subscription or anything. Police protection. Police protection is for all. If you want to avail it, you can avail it. Rather, you can make arrangements to avail it. Or lighthouse, public highway, it is like open to all, and there is no formal relationship happening between you and the service personnel. Now there are discrete transactions happening, not in a continuous format, but you have a membership. For example, long distance calls. If you're going for long distance calls not right now, this is not the example for right now, because long back you have trunk calls and all. So you have to book, and there is a continuous activity, or maybe there is a continuous relationship for a separated period of time. And theater series subscription, travel on commuter ticket. You take a ticket and you travel in an aircraft. That is an example for discrete transaction. Repair under warranty. Health treatment for HMO member, health member organization. So in these cases, you have a membership, and at the same time, you are not getting it in a continuous manner. You get it in an intermittent interval. Now, you have discrete transactions, and there is no formal relationship in the case of car rental. You take the car, and you avail it, leave it back. There is no continuity like you avail it today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, every day you use it. Nothing like that. Mail service. Whenever, for example, the olden days where you get Elend card, Christmas card and all, it's like maybe for every Christmas you get a card. Not like every day you get a card or every hour you get a card. Nothing. So it happens discreetly, not continuously. Toll highway, pay phone, movie theater, public transportation, restaurants. These are examples for no formal relationships. Now, scope for customization and judgment in the delivery of service. Now, to the extent to which you can customize, gives it another way how you demarcate the service, how you classify the service. For example, if it is highly customizable, you have something called legal services. What do you mean by legal service? For each and every customer, the case would be different. The legal formalities would be different. So it is to be highly customized. Healthcare or a surgery. For each and every patient, the doctor has to be physically attending the patient, and based on the complications of the health record of each and every patient, the service given to different patients is different. So a highly customized service has to be provided. Architectural design. For each and every house, the design is different. Real estate agency. Taxi service. You have to take to different routes. So it's different. Beautician. A plumber. Education tutorials. Now these are examples for, tutorials means tuitions, for individual tuitions. So these are examples for highly customizable services. There are some low customized services. For example, education, and preventive health programs. Education for large classes, you're giving education for a mass of people, for example 40-50 people, you're giving one particular lecture and they all are availing the same thing. And preventive health programs, for example pulse polio, or there could be some preventive health programs where medicines are given to the people in their home, and they don't have a direct meeting with the physician. So it is like low customizable. There's no much contact. Now, telephone service, hotel service, retail banking, good restaurants are examples for extent to which characteristics are customized. Now, characteristics of services are not highly customized, but extent to which there is a contact between the service personnel is low. In the case of telephone, hotel service, retail banking, good restaurant, etc., there is no much contact between the personnel and the service agent, but extent to which the customization happening is high. Now there is no much contact and the customization is low in the case of public transportation, routine appliance repair, fast food restaurant, movie theater, and spectator sports. You're just viewing the sport. Now this division or this classification of service is based on customization. The next one is the classification based on the nature of demand. There could be peak demand where usually being met with or without a major delay. Sometimes there may be peak demand, there may be high demand, and there could be a delay in availing the service. Or there could be another service where there is peak demand and always regularly exceeding the capacity. And at the same time, the demand fluctuations over time. There is a wide demand fluctuations and there is a no much, here what we say is there is a high demand fluctuation or there is no demand fluctuation. The fluctuation is almost the same. Or there is a demand is almost the same. Let us see where there is a wide demand fluctuations. Electricity, natural gas, telephone, hospital, maternity unit, police and fire emergencies. Now what happens is there could be a peak demand and met with or without a major delay. In front of a maternity ward, there could be people standing or waiting in queues because there are a lot of people waiting, and the service is actually in queue. So it happens to be like you have to wait, or you cannot. They might be at some place. Sometime there is a peak. There is no much demand. You can directly walk in. And where there is a demand, fluctuation is low. Insurance, legal service, banking, laundry and dry cleaning, there is no much fluctuation for demand. It's almost the same. And it can be met without a delay. And peak demand regularly exceeding capacity in the case of accounting and tax preparation, passenger transportation, hotels and restaurants and theaters, where there is a wide demand fluctuation over time. At the same time, demand regularly exceeds the capacity. Now there is a narrow demand. There is no much demand fluctuation happening in the case of insurance, legal, banking and laundry for their base level of business. No, this particular demarcation of service is based on the demand, on the peak demand or low demand. And the last one is based on method of service delivery. Now customer can go to the service organization. Sometimes the delivery could be such way that the customer is going to the service organization, as in the case of haircut or a beautician or a spa. Now there could be multiple sites, for example bus stations. You can avail bus station not from one particular stop, you can avail bus station from different stops. Fast food chain, you can have that particular food not only from one particular place, you can have it from different places. So it's like multiple sites. Service organization comes to customer. In the case of a lawn care service, the service organization comes to you. Maybe the lawn care means the gardener, maybe the garden caring. Like the customer, the service comes to you. In the case of pest control service, the service personnel comes to you. In the case of a taxi, the taxi comes to you. So it is like on a single site, the service organization comes to the customer. Mail delivery, it is like the postman is not only giving service to you, but is giving service to many people. Auto club road service. So these are service organization coming to customer. One is single site, other is multiple site. Customer and service organization transact at arm's length, which means not like they are very close to each other, but on the tip of a phone call or in the vicinity, maybe at some distance. For example, credit card company, local TV stations are happening in a single site. Broadcast network, telephone company are operating at a multiple site. So this particular classification of service is based on the method of service delivery. Now we'll just revise the 5 classification of services. The first one is the nature of service act. The second one is type of relationship that the service organization have with the customer. You have continuous service and discrete service. Now, based on the scope for customization, you have high customizability and low customizability. And depending on the nature of demand, you have peak demand, you have peak demand regularly exceeding capacity. And finally, you have the method of service delivery. Based on the method of service delivery, you can customize. Now, there is a final method, or you can even say this is the somewhat similar to the first one, that is Nature of Service Act. Now this is highly acclaimed one. This is highly seen in textbooks, and in the textbook of Lovelock, Christopher Lovelock, this is the one which is highly showcased, or rather this is the major demarcation of service. So let's listen to this in detail. Service, a process perspective. Depending on the process, differences exist among services depending on what is being processed. Whatever is being processed, depending on that, you can classify services into 4. That is people processing, possession processing, mental stimulus processing, and information processing. Now, you have tangibility and intangibility. You have people and possessions. Based on that, you have people processing, possession, mental stimulus, and information processing. Now, what do you mean by people processing? In people processing, the possession or the services directed at people's body. For example, you have barber and healthcare. In this particular place, the possession, the service is done on people, like barber and healthcare. So this is an example of people processing. The customer must physically enter the service factory. There is high tangibility happening here. Cooperate actively with the service operations. And maybe you may just give the example of a child taken for a haircut and he becomes so restless, and ultimately what happens, the service is not taking its full shape. The child doesn't get a good haircut. So it is highly important that the cooperation with the service personnel is highly important in the case of people processing. Managers should think about the process and output from the customer's perspective, which means what? The direct output is going towards the customer's body. So people have to be, or the service personnel should directly understand what all things would a customer require. Based on that, he should shape the service environment. Maybe in the case of a haircut, if the people are waiting, you should give a good room for them to wait. For example, there should be some TV there should be some good ambience for some music, or a good color painting, or some magazines, which helps them not to get irritated and wait more on. Like to identify benefits created and non-financial cost, time, mental and physical effort. Now, there could be possession processing. Like service is not done on you, but on your possessions. For example, there could be some service done on your possession, like your car. You're refueling your car or bike. Service is being done your car or bike. It could be on a veterinary service. The service is not done on you, but on your pets or domestic animals. So these are the examples for possession processing, where there is less involvement, or rather you don't have to be physically present where the service of your bike is taking place. There is limited involvement. And the production and consumption are separable. The production consumption can be separated. Now the next one is mental stimulus processing. Now take the example of this particular class that is happening. What am I doing? I am giving a lecture. I am giving some information. And what happens ultimately to you? Your mental stimulus, or the information, or the conscious level is getting processed. The information that I give happens not on your body, not on your possessions, but happens on your mental stimulus. Now that is what is called mental stimulus processing. And the correct example is an education. Now, so education is the example for mental stimulus processing, and it can be inventoried. For example, the CD that I give you, that you get, or the online materials that you get can be inventoried, or it can be stored. So mental stimulus processing happens on your mental stimulus or brain, and it can be processed, and it can be inventoried. And advertisement is another example. You get more information when you see the advertisements. You get more insight about the products and the brands, but it can be stored also. The last one is information processing. For example, banking, legal services. All these are, or what happens ultimately is like information is getting processed. The information that is the intangible form is getting processed, and it may be transformed into enduring forms of service output. The line between information processing and mental stimulus processing may be unclear. There is no much demarcation between information processing and mental stimulus processing. Only thing is, like in mental stimulus processing, there is more tangibility because it is happening on you, and in information processing, the difference is like the information is processed not on you but on your possessions. That's it. So we'll take a quick recap once again. The types of 4 categories of service, or a service perspective or a process perspective. You have service divided into people processing, possession processing, mental stimulus processing, and information processing. In people processing, the service directed at people's body, barber, healthcare. In possession processing, the service directed at physical possessions of yours, for example, refueling, disposal, or recycling. In mental stimulus processing, services directed at people's mind, example, education, public relations, and advertising. And information processing, services directed at intangible assets like accounting and banking. So those are the different ways in which services can be classified. Thank you.